Sometimes we are forced to face our darknesses. We are forced to see what's been hidden in our collective unconsciousness for so long, especially in times when we are unwilling to slow down, when we consistently distract ourselves or hide from the truth. We do it to ourselves. Often we might push ourselves individually in our own lives. When we feel unwell, we keep going. We mask it with artificial means, and at a certain point, it comes time to truly face it and see it, because you can run no longer, and something like a collapse occurs. And on personal levels, this might have happened to a lot of you, where a dark night of the soul ensues, where you go through a terrible darkness that was unprecedented, something you didn't expect at all, and it brings you to your knees. And it's an extreme altered state of consciousness, a sense of suffering that you might not have had access to before. And through that terrible darkness, a shift occurs. A shift. Something clicks, something's transmuted, something changes, and you rise to a higher level. You do not go back to where you were before. What is interesting to note about a global shutdown or a collapse is that our collective unconscious narratives have thus far been ruling the show, but in a way that was masked from our eyes. And for it to finally shift to a point where you see it happen on a global scale is massive. It's, no matter what angle you take to look at it, and there are a lot of fearful perspectives and so much panic ensuing, and for good reason. This is challenging our root beliefs about security and survival and being in the world. What have you not done so far? How have you not been present? What did you wish that you had done? Something you wanted to do and now you can no longer. Sometimes we are forced to face things because that's the only way. Because we can almost infinitely delude ourselves and run from things. And sometimes it's the only way to have to face them head on. And it seems absolutely terrifying, as all change is. Chaotic and disruptive, and also massive. Because when it comes to this stage, where everything has to almost come to a standstill, know that big change is on the way. Know that massive shifts are on their way, are ensuing even as we speak. And one of the most beautiful things that is happening is the way that people are coming together to innovate, to create, to problem solve, to be there for each other. And I think that is a big aspect that we have longed for so long, whether we expressed it or not. And we fought against the way the system was, but we couldn't stop. The merry-go-round just kept going and going and going. There was no space to go inwards, to slow down, to see things as they could be, rather than simply the way that they have always been. And the way that they have always been has been a massive nail in the wheel, essentially. Because you thought that you couldn't pull it out, otherwise the whole wheel would lose air, and then you'd have a flat tire, and then the car would stop, and someone might stop you on the road, and they might murder you and steal all your things, and all these fears start coming in when everything that was a certain way stops being that way, when it collapses. And these fears of survival make sense on the world stage when faced with the mainstream way of being. Which, if we speak about this type of programming, we're going to bring into focus the fact that if you are told you cannot heal yourself, that the only way to ensure your safety is something from the external world. And I'm not necessarily talking about this issue now per se, but specifically just a mode of being. That there are no cures, that it matters not at all what you eat, what you do, what you ingest, that there are no chemicals, that we're not being poisoned. All of these factors not being considered leads to a situation of mass panic. Because people feel like they have no sovereignty at all. No free will at all to do anything. And in such a case, it becomes very easy to turn to what's being offered as the only solution. and to take that willingly. So right now, I think it would be an important shift to talk a little bit about what can be done, aside from people coming together and being in new and different ways, because this shift is head-on happening. But let's talk about ways that we can empower ourselves individually in ways that we might not have seen happening around us. People haven't talked about them, you haven't seen them on the mainstream media. And it's about as simple as the natural way of being. And what is that? And this is a bit of information that seems to have mutated itself into a frenzy that only now is slowing down as we can go within and look around and say, is this the way that we want things to be? Is it okay that we are disconnected and numb? Is it okay that we are isolated? Being forced into isolation is getting us to question the isolation that we have been living in for so long. I speak for myself right now and many other people that have actually been in a type of forced isolation for so many years, undergoing changes and isolations from society, feeling like we are going crazy, going through a darkness that made no sense, and in that time, learning ways to care for ourselves, learning ways to sustain ourselves. And in all of this craze, when it comes out that, something external can kill you, there have been a lot of people that for all of these years have been healing themselves. And this is what I want to bring today. Our DNA is an intelligent code that lives within our body. It can be altered by epigenetics, and epigenetics is essentially the fact that this code can be influenced by environmental factors, including what one eats and what one is surrounded by, even the thoughts that we think. And so when you realize that stress and panic and fear can actually script out entire realities, the picture becomes clear. So, what the natural way involves concerning immunity and one feeling better within their own self, it's grounding on the bare earth, access to sunlight, receiving the codes of information from the sunlight, having access to water. And water is an interesting topic because there's a lot of water that's completely contaminated or is imbalanced in ways that leaches important minerals from our bodies. However, we are adaptable, and this is a very important point here. We have gone through so many changes and adapted to so many things as each new wave rolled out of more and more control or more poisons. We have adapted and we have risen and we have changed, and our code is altered and been able to take that information, quarantine it, learn and create an antidote. You are the antidote. That is what I want to say today. You are the antidote. What you choose to believe, what you choose to surround yourself with, what you know, your information, your open mind, what you engage with, what you learn can save you, because essentially there is nothing externally that is going to be handed to us on a silver platter that is able to solve any of the problems that we face. And that is why a situation of collapse and forced isolation makes us realize that we cannot run from our problems. We cannot run from them, not in distraction, not in wishing for a new way to happen with no practical groundwork to make it so. And that's going to be very important at this point. So, speaking of which, the natural ways can help one do this. But this also includes information about what can you do specifically to help boost your health. I'm finding it very interesting that things like, yes, alcohol can weaken the immune system. Smoking affects the body, affects the lungs, weaken people, make it more difficult to fight off something when it does come. But all of this information has been known for so long, but a lot of times we need an impetus. We need an impetus to fight, to change, to grow. Sometimes we have to be forced into things in order to see them for what they truly are and awaken to the reality of things. Fresh food. In case supermarkets haven't, put everything else away and simply put spotlights on fruits and vegetables and said, this is it, guys. In case I haven't done that yet, that is the way to go. Our immunity is contained within our guts. 80% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. Most of your immunity is in your gut. Why? Because there are trillions of microorganisms that live there that break down a lot of your food, that produce a lot of your vitamins, that actually produce factors that correlate to your immunity. There's so much that goes on in the gut. And so guarding that and learning how to eat for your health to provide you the nutrients that you need to heal leaky gut syndrome, which actually comes through eating a lot of inflammatory compounds, that is going to be so important at this time. So looking to understand this is to go down that path and look at anti-inflammatories. Look at fresh foods, raw foods, vegetables. Eating a lot of things like that is definitely going to help. But the story doesn't end there. Because once you start playing around with elimination diets, removing things that might make you feel odd, because the gut-brain axis are very connected. It's essentially things that go into the gut have an impact on the brain. So once you start playing around with what could be causing symptoms, because a lot of symptoms that we don't speak about half the time, and most people take a suppressive pathway to deal with, like taking a drug that just suppresses that pathway and doesn't really get to the root cause. This could be very important in understanding why one's body is reacting the way that it is, because the body is intelligent and it's always giving you signals. So I would just want to throw the word in here about the Gerson therapy. The Gerson therapy is one of the most remarkable feats of anybody's research ever. Max Gerson was a German doctor, and he was having these terrible migraines, and he set out to figure it out. And he went down a path of a defined nutritional pathway that included a lot of detoxing, a lot of supplements, and he essentially ended up curing his migraines. But in the process of that, he had helped so many tuberculosis patients, and it ultimately led to a cancer cure, because it was a very, very high dose of nutrients. It involves juicing about every hour of the day, drinking really concentrated nutrients, a lot of enemas, which are removing the impacted waste in the colon, and a high dose of certain supplements which are necessary to boost one's immunity and actually help the glands work, such as iodine. And this is remarkable, because it means that everything that we have been told about the way that the body works is not the way that the body works. We can heal ourselves. We are able to heal ourselves. We can reverse anything. We can reverse DNA damage. We can activate genes and things that bring in our healing. Most of the matters that concern healing include removing the blockages that are in the way of your own energy being able to heal itself. That's all. It's quite simple. It's not really that there is something external that is going to cause a change. It's about what is in the way of your body's natural way of doing things, the natural way of regenerating. So that nutritional therapy is an interesting one to look into, because it also follows an eliminative pathway of removing certain things that do damage to the body. Because that's another thing. When a lot of things are consumed or in the environment around us that create poisons in our bodies, it becomes very difficult to heal. It becomes very difficult to fight off infections and things like that, which is the natural role of your body. If you follow down the pathway of Dr. Sebi, you will see that mucus is at the root of most diseases. Why is that? That is essentially the response of an inflammation. It's the response of an infection. There are so many foods and so many chemicals that create a lot of mucus in the body. They block up our channels for the way that the normal system functions. And removing that out of the way is at the basis of a lot of healing. So let's talk a little bit about the environmental factors that can put a body under stress. This includes things like toxins in our water, toxins in our environment, in our homes, like mold, and a lot of chemicals that come off of traditional chemical things like washing detergent or the hand soap or the cleaning chemicals. This stuff is just poison. I mean, it's about as simple as it goes. This stuff is poison. These chemicals aggregate inside of our organs. These chemicals affect neural pathways. They alter the way that things operate. A lot of these chemicals compete with neurotransmitters and other chemicals and enzymes within your body. A lot of things are disrupting hormones. So this story of healing oneself begins with awareness. It begins with learning that there is a different way of doing things. It is not taking on any one person's perspective on it. It's not saying they have the cure or they have the answer, because everybody is fallible. We have our own perspective. We speak in words. Sometimes we make a mess of things. Sometimes our words don't even translate across. So what you're looking for here is a spark. It's being activated by something, and it speaks to you. And when you follow that piece of information, it gets you to where you need to go because it had something for you. It was a message. And maybe you find something in your personal research looking into that thing, or you feel inspired to reach out to somebody to ask them, and they give you an answer, and it changes your entire world. So the first step is awareness. Things are not as they seem, and there is always more to the picture. So if you are feeling called to look into giving yourself a fighting chance and getting healthier, whether that's through moving your body, exercise, yoga, sleeping better, healing, supplements that can boost your immunity, or fresh foods that can make you feel vital and well, then do it. Do it. Go look into it. There is so much information out there. And if there's anybody that's intriguing you with any kind of information and you'd like to hear more, ask them. We're all here for each other at this point. There is nowhere else to go. This is our world. This is our home. Here we are. We are with each other. We are one. Borders or not, divisions or not, we are one global family. We live here together under this sky on this earth. And as disassociated as we have become from our spirits and from each other, at a certain point, change must come, because that is the way. That is the way how things evolve and move and grow. Consciousness wants to experience itself. It wants to push itself to extremes in order to experience every side, every piece of the spectrum. And here we are. So that's one side. And once you have the awareness of where you could look and what could be causing a lot of these problems, how to empower oneself, you move on to alternatives. You basically get to the point where, okay, I've assessed myself, or I've found some answers that I'm now willing to attempt, and you begin to implement these alternatives. You try things, you eliminate, you test, you research, you begin to see some kinds of effects happening. And that is when your reality shifts. It's not when someone tells you something, it's when you try it for yourself. When you try something for yourself and you feel the effects of it, there's no one in this entire world that can tell you that what you experienced, you didn't experience. And that's where true change occurs, because you begin to feel hopeful. You begin to feel passionate and inspired about the fact that you made a change. You took something into your own hands and you moved forwards and you did something about it, and there are results. I'm always massively surprised by the resilience of the human body and the human experience. You can take a herbal supplement and doubt that it's going to do anything, and within 2 days your cold is less, or you feel better, and you forget that it was connected to that herbal supplement, and then you realize, wait a minute, I, for whatever reason, seem to think that we are not sensitive beings and we do not respond to our reality. We always think that we are responding negatively to what's around us, but you can also respond in an amazing positive way, because when you add something good or when you remove something that's harming you, you're going to bounce back massively. And that's where all of this change and these results come in, because once you try something new and you implement these things, you are going to see change. There is no way that you can put yourself forwards and try something new. It took courage, it took bravery to take that step. There's no way that you're not going to experience something. It might not be the end result that you were looking for. It could be a completely unpredictable effect that you did not see coming. But that thing, that's going to lead to something else, and that's going to lead to something else. And before you know it, you're going to have a deeper understanding of who you are as a person, how your body operates, even how the world operates. And you will not feel so scared, because there will be hope in knowing that it's between you and yourself what you do, and that there is no one out there that can stop you from healing yourself. or that can heal you if you are not on board with yourself. So once these alternatives come in, you can test them. But then sometimes we hit roadblocks. We try things, but we don't really know how to take it deeper, or we have a crisis. So going back to the beginning of this conversation, when I said something about the dark night of the soul, essentially when we are energetic beings, we're spiritual beings, and when we go through changes, we come across blockages within our energy system, and this could lead to a crisis. So this energy basically comes up against a blockage, and you might spiral down into a dark night of the soul where you experience the twilight zone of your reality, where you're essentially forced to face your shadow or the traumas that you were running from, and everything doesn't make any sense anymore, and it's a very difficult stage. Now, you can emerge from that cocoon, so to speak. And this spiritual emergence, you're at a new level, you're at different strength, you see things differently. But sometimes these spiritual emergences can be spiritual emergencies. When nothing makes sense at all, it's incredibly intense and trying. And you might get sicker before you get better. So this is concerning every type of change, whether mental, psychological, emotional, on a body level. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better. And I mean, look around us right now. How much worse can things get, right? So sometimes you experience a big lashback from all of the addictions that one might have had inside their body, or all kinds of parasites, or candida, which is a fungus that grows in the body and could grow out of proportion when it's kicked out of balance because it's being fed. All of those things have die-off symptoms. When one moves into a new way of being, when they start to eliminate certain foods or add in certain supplements, you might experience a crisis. You might experience your reality shifting. And a lot of the times we are not ready for that. We have a lot of cognitive dissonance within our minds about how things work. We really only want to take in evidence to support what we already believe, because things that challenge us, they lead to growth. If we're willing to go down that pathway, a lot of the times we just shut down, and that challenge leads to nothing because we reinforce a prior belief and we give up, oftentimes too soon. So when we experience these types of crises of getting sicker or our bodies shifting, things changing, know that there is a massive, amazing opportunity for change and healing and growth within that. And that's when we move to this third phase, adoption or receiving support. Because a lot of the times when you go through these things, you wish that there were guidance to tell you what to do when it gets hard, or if what you are experiencing is normal. That is a very important aspect. I've experienced this as basically life-changing. It saved my life when I was going through something tumultuous and I thought that I was completely alone. I ultimately reached out to somebody that was older than me, that had gone through this before me. And all she had to say was, "This is normal. This is fine." And it lifted a weight off my chest, and I felt that I could go on. So that third aspect of coming together with others or learning from their experience, being guided through this darkness, I believe those three things are truly what make us human, what make us alive here together as a global organism. The fact that we can become aware of different things, that things are not as they seem, the fact that we can do new things, even if at first we resist, and the fact that we are here together, and someone out there has experienced what you have experienced now. And they've probably found a solution. And even though we have this global internet connectivity and we felt ourselves as a global world where we could travel everywhere that we wanted, we have been so isolated. We have been unable to do anything without feeling afraid. We just went through the motions. And this time of isolation maybe can shine a light on the fact that we are not actually as alone as we think we are. And I hope that we can continue to come together, to inspire each other, to hold each other, hold space for each other, to shine light on the wounds, because Mother Earth could not take it anymore. I mean, let's say this frankly right now. We have been pillaging and raping and burning and taking and doing and running and going, and enough, enough. Send love to the parts of the world that are aching and hurting. Just because we were in our individual bubbles does not mean that people were not dying and things were not changing. And the world needs our love right now. It needs our vigilance and our awareness of what is going on around each other. It needs us to be able to be open to each other. And this is an important aspect as well, because sometimes just willing yourself to be open has nothing to do with anything. And so this is why it becomes important to look into what is it that causes us to shut down and disassociate and lock down our nervous system. How can we open up those pathways? Focusing on healing the pineal gland, for example, that is responsible for most of our hallucinations of our daily reality. That is going to be very important. And to find out that things that shut this gland down, there are top 4: aluminium, glyphosate, what else? Like radiation, and there was a 4th one that I had shared earlier. Fluoride. And these things can actually be targeted, and that pineal gland can be healed. It's one of the most sensitive parts of the nervous system. That can be healed by a holistic approach, which was mentioned throughout this video concerning, well, cleaning out the diet, cleaning out the toxin in the environment, adding in supplements. Decalcification of this pineal gland can occur. All of these hard crystallized aspects can be removed. The mucus that is all around our bodies can be dissolved. The parasites that are within us and all around us can be evicted. The global parasite can go down. Everything can change. Dream a dream of a new world now. Dream a dream of a world where we do not have to be kicked off of work and sitting at home and not being paid jack shit. Now we know that what was holding up this entire thing was us. It was not anything else. It was not some higher up that was earning all from it. They weren't holding up. They weren't making it run. It's us. It was the people working day in and out to make this a thing. So know that now it is our time. It is our time to dream our dream and to make our world the way that we wish it to be. Do we want it to be fearful? Do we want it to be controlled? Do we now see the illusion of freedom that we are under, and do we now call in true freedom, true sovereignty, true healing? How can we forget our mother? How can we forget Earth? How can we forget that we are made of her? How can we forget that there would be nothing without these wild birds and without this earth beneath our feet and without this air that these trees release? Remember now that this is our chance. This is her chance to heal. This is our chance to come together, to remember the things that make us us. And I think that is the most resilient and beautiful thing about human beings, that when we are faced and challenged with something new, there is always a doorway, there's always a portal, there's always a way to shift. There's always something that can come out of it. I challenge you to remember this. I urge you to remember this. I hope that we can keep sharing love and support with each other in these times of fear. When you see somebody panicking or doing something that you might otherwise call out, remember that they are responding from their programming. They're in fear. They're in pain. They are suffering. They are lost in their own darkness. And maybe this is the first time that they have ever been faced with their reality crumbling in such a way. So have compassion for each other. Be as present as you possibly can. And there is no better way to become present than to be faced with an ultimate truth, and then to be faced with something that you wanted to run from or that was so scary. And I know that this can seem like the end of the world, or like it is going to go down in a completely dark path, and maybe we don't want it to go there and we are resisting. Just know your power to dream together a better dream is what is holding this up. So think about what it is that you want to bring into this new world. We are not going to be sat in our homes for the rest of our lives. We are not going to be running a system this corrupt and greedy and awful for the rest of our lives. That's not why we are here. That is not why we are here. Each of you has a unique seed within you that is dying to burst forth into bloom, to be who you really are, to truly feel. That is what makes us so amazing. Our capacity to feel. No wonder we've been shut down in so many different types of ways. Fluoride, chemicals, drugs. We are here to feel. To feel and to express and to experience. When we hear music, we all feel something. When we look at a baby, when we look up at the stars, when we speak to each other, we have the capacity to make somebody smile, to change somebody's life, to heal together. That is what I want you to remember now. As fearful as things are, is it a world that we want? Do we want to be afraid and lonely and lost and have no answers and no cures and nothing to do except be with ourselves and suffering? I don't believe that. And I will continue to dream the dream where we come together collectively around a very large fire and we can laugh and we can each express some kind of unique, goofy thing that we carry within us that we wanted to express our entire lives. And I want to thank you for being here with us to share this thing. Because as dark as things may seem, as absolutely terrible and as chaotic as they are, there is light on the horizon. And things will fall through, they will shift, and there will be another side. And I am singing a song in my soul and in my heart for you to be there too. For us to be cradled in the arms of nature and to have created a society and a system that works for us, not for anybody's greed. Thank you for being here.